past weekend, Peter Pan and Wendy, the latest in a long line of Disney's live-action remakes, premiered on Disney+. Now it's time to rank all 21 Disney live-action remakes from the worst to the best. Coming out last place at number 21 is Maleficent, Mistress of Evil. In some ways, this movie tries to be a course correction of the first film, which took a villain who was evil just for the fun of it, and made her a sympathetic villain. That idea, for obvious reasons, got a lot of backlash. So this film tries to fix that, but yet, at the same time, still suffers from many of the same problems. The film's plot is very convoluted, with about these kingdoms at war, and it is shockingly dark given its PG rating, and it feels like it's trying to be PG-13, but it holds back just enough, so as a result, the film feels very sloppy. Michelle Pfeiffer is great as the villain, but its story is a mess. Number 20, Maleficent, a movie that takes character as one of Disney's most despicable villains, and instead gives her a backstory that tries to make you feel sorry for her, makes you seem like she was the misunderstood hero instead of this really despicable villain you love rooting against. Instead of serving as a cautionary tale about revenge and hate, it instead decides to make her the victim. Society was the villain all along. You need to feel sorry for her. What were you thinking with this? Number 19, Pete's Dragon, a film with absolutely none of the magic or whimsy of the original. Instead of this being a fun story about a boy who finds a dragon and becomes friends with him to escape his abusive family, we instead get a movie that's very serious in tone and for some reason decides to preach about forest preservation. The villain's motivations in the film are also not that clear. He wants the dragon for some reason, and it's never clear as to why, so therefore we don't know what the stakes are. The film is also very slow, very boring, and the kid who plays Pete also doesn't come off as a natural kid. He comes off as overly cutesy instead of precocious like the original Pete. Number 18, The Lion King, a movie that has zero reason to exist. Some of the remakes, I can see what the mindset behind their justification was. Some of them are remakes of films that have certain elements that haven't aged well for today's sensibilities, or maybe by today's standards they're a bit slower pacing-wise. Lion King is neither of those. This feels more like director Jon Favreau wanted to do what Robert Zemeckis did with Polar Express, where he was more focused on showing off new filmmaking technology rather than trying to make an actual movie. This movie is over 2 hours long, and a lot of that is because shots in the original that are only about 10 seconds are instead in this version dragged out to almost a minute. The disadvantage to the film also looking realistic is that the emotions of the characters cannot be fully expressed, so as a result we don't resonate with them or feel the emotion we're supposed to feel. It looks visually stunning, but there's no reason for its existence. Number 17, Alice in Wonderland. In theory, Tim Burton should be the perfect director for this, but when it comes to the execution, he completely botched it. Instead of the quirkiness of the original, we instead get a cliché chosen one prophecy story with a very dark tone and a main actress who delivers a very boring performance. Johnny Depp and Helena Bonham Carter have some fun with this movie as the Manhattan Red Queen, but that's about it. Number 16, Dumbo, another Tim Burton-directed Disney remake that also feels very lacking. The execution here feels very inconsistent. It feels like Tim Burton wanted to do a fresh, new version of the story, but Disney wanted to play it safe, and they tried to find a happy medium and failed. This doesn't really feel like a Tim Burton movie with his unique creative vision. It just feels very safe and dull. Number 15, The Lady and the Tramp, a movie that just kind of exists. It doesn't really do much that's different. It feels very safe. It recreates all the iconic scenes from the original, and it does nothing to expand on the ideas or try to justify its existence. It's so much like the original, you might as well just watch the original. Number 14, Peter Pan and Wendy. Very mixed film. Jude Law is fantastic as Captain Hook, and the film can have its fun moments, but overall, I still had a lot of issues with it. The biggest issue being just how drab this movie looks. Neverland is supposed to be a vibrant landscape of wonder, and this film gives us very muted colors that frankly make the film very boring to look at. The film also seems to forget that the point of Wendy being there is to be a mother, and so for some reason there are girls in The Lost Boys. Like in the original story, Wendy is brought there because the Lost Boys want that female influence, so when you put girls in The Lost Boys, it completely negates the reason for Wendy even being brought to Neverland in the first place. The film also has a very odd tone, as it comes off more like a Pirates of the Caribbean movie mixed with Maleficent. And speaking of Maleficent, we of course have that film's problem here of trying to make Captain Hook a sympathetic villain. Now, I do admire the film did at least try something different with the story, rather than just being a straight-up shot-for-shot remake, or making it so different that it's hard to even recognize it as the same story. But I thought this film, while it was very watchable, should have been vastly improved. Number 13, Mulan. Frankly, I think this movie gets a lot more hate than it deserves. I honestly don't think it's that bad. I do have a few issues with it, mainly the main actress, who gives a very wooden performance, and the villain isn't the best written, but this film really delivers on the action. Mulan is a war story, and we get some very exciting war sequences in this film. While the characters and story can be kind of lacking and maybe somewhat clunky at times, I at least appreciate the fact that it's a different take. Number 12, 101 Dalmatians. Even though this movie is just kind of okay, it's still entertaining enough. It's directed by John Hughes, who directed the first two Home Alone movies, and that's basically what this is. Home Alone with puppies. The dogs don't talk in this movie, thank goodness, because that would just be weird. Glenn Close gives a delightful performance as Cruella de Vil, along with Hugh Laurie and Mark Williams also delivering fun performances as her henchmen. It's got fun slapstick humor and is a delight. Number 11, 102 Dalmatians. I think the story in this one is a lot stronger. The idea of Cruella de Vil being rehabilitated and trying to make up for what she did, and then going crazy again and getting revenge on the puppies and the dogs who defeated her in the first film. A lot of fun ideas here. You got Eric Idle as the parrot who thinks he's a dog, which is really funny. The character of Oddball, who goes to these insane lengths to try and get spots. And Gerard Depardieu as her new henchman Lapelt also provides a lot of laughs. I find this movie a lot more entertaining than the original. Number 10, Alice Through the Looking Glass. A vast improvement over the 2010 version. However, it still has a few problems. For one, Alice is still a very bland and wooden character. She doesn't really feel like she has this sense of curiosity or wonder that Alice is supposed to have. But at least from a story perspective, this one at least feels somewhat more like an Alice in Wonderland story by personifying abstract ideas, mainly the idea of time. The writing is a lot of fun with its many jokes and puns about time and the ideas about time travel and its consequences. It's a lot more fun and feels more in line with what Alice in Wonderland is supposed to be. Number 9, Beauty and the Beast. I do agree, Emma Watson was probably not the best choice for Belle, but visually, this movie is marvelous. While some of the characters don't translate very well to live action, it fixes a lot of the plot holes of the original, like why was the prince, who was simply a child who was obeying stranger danger rules, so cruelly cursed? The songs are also fantastic to watch, feeling very much in line with the animated version, as well as the new songs they've added to this film expanding the story. There's a few issues with it, but it's still one of the better films on this list. Number 8, Pinocchio, which I think is probably a bit of a hot take because it seems like everybody hates this movie. I thought it was fine. Zemeckis makes it enough like the original, but he also puts his own spin on it. While it is more or less a shot-for-shot remake of the original, there's enough extra elements that make it feel fresh in its own film. The Coachman is given a pretty catchy villain song, and there's some new characters that make the film feel like it's not a complete retread. Zemeckis' version of Pleasure Island is particularly creative, as is his design for Monster the Whale. Now, a couple of issues from which the film suffers is the Blue Fairy, because though that actress does give a wonderful performance, her character's design is somewhat unsettling, and she is only in the first scene of the film and then never again, making her feel like she's less important of a character in this version. And the film also makes a point to show the villain as Stromboli being brought to justice for his crimes, but it seems like Honest John the Fox and his cat accomplice and the Coachman, they all get away scot-free, so it makes that decision feel inconsistent. Also, Pinocchio doesn't even turn into a real boy at the end, so not sure what was up with that. But the film, despite a few issues of its own, is just as magical, exciting, and scary as the original. I think Walt Disney would be mostly proud of this new version, even though it has a few issues, and that's no lie. Number 7, The Jungle Book. Everyone in this movie is perfectly cast. Bill Murray is Baloo, Idris Elba as Shere Khan, Scarlett Johansson as Kaa. The CGI in the movie is groundbreaking, and the story is a bit heavy-handed with its message. I still think it's a very well-made film. It's kind of a weird contrast how Jon Favreau was able to make a really good version of Jungle Book, yet such a terrible version of Lion King. Number 6, Christopher Robin. A wonderful little film that, while it does basically just do the same thing as the movie Hook, is very heartwarming. This is definitely geared more towards the adults who grew up with Winnie the Pooh, and it's a wonderful reminder of the value of taking time out of your day to just have fun. Just because you become an adult doesn't mean you have to be stuffy all the time. It's also got a wonderful message about not letting your work life make you neglect your family. The CGI on Pooh and the other animals is fantastic. Jim Cummings returns to the role of Winnie the Pooh and gives a very sweet, innocent performance. He gives this movie a lot of heart. This is a film that will take you back to a simpler time in your life and perhaps teach you a few life lessons as well. Number 5, Sorcerer's Apprentice. In my opinion, this is a remake by technicality only, because pretty much its own story. The only thing that makes this qualify as a remake is one scene that recreates the Fantasia short this is based on. Other than that, it's its own thing, and it's all the better for it. While the performances by Nicolas Cage and Jay Baruchel can be very mixed, but that's pretty typical for them, the film has a lot of creativity, excitement, and a pretty fun story. Number 4, Cinderella. Kenneth Branagh's take on the classic fairy tale is absolutely gorgeous. Cinderella and the prince get a lot more character development, the relationship feels more fleshed out instead of rushed. Kate Blanchett delivers a fantastic performance as the stepmother. You just love to hate her. I think she's one of the best villains in this remake list, and it also delivers a great message for the audience. Number 3, Cruella. Now, out of all the movies on this list, this is definitely the most daring and feels the least like a Disney movie, and that is a good thing. It isn't afraid to go to some dark places and provide commentary on mental illness and the nature versus nurture debate, and instead of doing what Maleficent did, where they try to make the villain sympathetic, they clearly learned from that movie because this instead serves as a cautionary tale about revenge. It's also very well stylized, feeling like a cross between Ocean's 11 and Batman Returns, which helps it stand out from all the other live-action adaptations. Number 2, Aladdin. This keeps the spirit and tone of the original while also greatly expanding upon it. Jasmine feels like an actual character rather than just a plot device or goal for Aladdin. Will Smith brings his own spin of charisma and humor to the genie. The film is gorgeous. It's got dance numbers straight out of a Bollywood film. Really, my only complaint is the casting of Jafar, because Jafar doesn't seem sinister enough, but I still think this is one of the best live-action remakes. It's fantastic. And number 1 is Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. This is like all the humor of the Lego movies, but leaning more towards satire and parody. The jokes in this movie are about Hollywood selling out, washed-up actors, meta-humor, things kids probably won't get because they're not in on the joke. This is the kind of movie you need to watch twice. Once for the plot and the dialogue, and the second time so you can pause to get all the background jokes and cameos. The YouTubers who make videos that point out the background Easter eggs and references, I'm sure they're going to have an absolute buffet with this. In terms of plot, it does have a few similarities to Roger Rabbit. Mainly the idea that cartoons are actors, there's a villain coming after them, but it's also widely different and stands out as its own thing. And you don't need to watch the show to understand the movie. You'll definitely appreciate it more if you do, but you can go into this not having seen a single episode of the show and still get a kick out of it. It's very much a love letter to animation, it's a love letter to 90s kids who grew up with the show, and it's great for the whole family. Everyone, regardless of their age, can get a kick out of it. It's absolutely hilarious, and it comes in at number 1. I'm going to share your ranking of the Disney live-action remakes, and I will see you next time.